Hello, Bioneers friends. In some ways, this feels so much like old times because we've done it so often. So many times I've gotten to stand there in San Rafael and talk with you, or sometimes at some of the satellite locations out around the country. To be a part of the Bioneers family has been super important to me over the years because Bioneers family has been super important to making progress on crucial issues. Thanks to Kenny and everybody else, this is the kind of lab where new ideas emerge, where we're able to start thinking about solutions, about organizing for those solutions, about gathering the artistic head of steam we need, about uniting people from across cultures. I'll just say that from the fight about the Keystone Pipeline to the fight over divestment to 100 other things that we've been engaged in over the years, it's been absolutely crucial. And that is one of the big reasons that I wanted to bring this new idea to you, this work that we're doing now, that's aimed mostly at people my age, 60 and above. The graybeards, literal and metaphorical, among us, and what a pleasure it is to be in that group too, if only it means because we've made it through this far. Let me talk for a minute first about the thing I always talk about, which is where we find ourselves in the greatest existential crisis that human beings have ever faced. This crisis around the climate. You know that much of the news is not good. You know that we're having year after year record temperatures. We had earlier this year what may be the most anomalous and scary heat wave the world has ever seen. That was that heat that settled over the Pacific Northwest and Canada in June and saw us breaking temperature records, not by a degree or two, which is what happens in an ordinary terrifying record-setting global warming heat wave, but breaking records by 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 degrees. The temperature got to 121 degrees in Canada, which is probably hotter than it's been in Canada since the Pleistocene. It's hotter than it's ever been in Florida. The town where that number was recorded burned to the ground the next day. For me, it was a remarkable reminder of where we are in this crisis. And of course, one could multiply examples like that all day and all night. I will not do that. Suffice it to say that having raised the temperature 1 degree already, and in the process set awry the jet stream and the Gulf Stream and the way that hydrology, water moves around this planet, we're on a path at the moment to raise the temperature 3 degrees Celsius, 5, 6 degrees Fahrenheit before the end of the century. If we do that, then we will not be able to have civilizations like the ones we're used to having. Those are the stakes. Those are why we fight so hard and so urgently. This is a time test, and we have to move fast. And of course, one of the things that makes it hard to move fast is because it's not only our climate that's broken, it's our democracy that in many ways is limping along at best. Where even good-intentioned efforts like those of the current administration are constantly at the mercy of a single senator in the control of the coal industry or whatever it is. So I want to talk about the successes that we've had and then how we're going to build on them. The successes of the last decade, and Bioneers has been involved in both of these, are twofold. One is a great success of science and engineering and solutions. Dropping the price of renewable energy 90% was the greatest gift that we could have gotten in this world. Solar power and wind power cost 1/10 what they did a decade ago, and now batteries to store that power are falling at the same rate, and that means there is no longer a technological nor financial obstacle to doing what needs to be done. that is remarkably good news. There was a big study from Oxford just a few weeks ago saying that a rapid transition to clean energy would save the planet tens of trillions of dollars even before you got to the huge savings that come from not wrecking the earth due to climate change, simply because renewable energy is now cheaper. But that doesn't mean that we're going to move fast enough to get it done, because vested interest and inertia are in the way, which is why the other great thing that's happened in the last 10 years is the rise of big movements to push us in the right direction. Those of us who started 350.org were a kind of early iteration of this work, and now we've been joined by the wonderful people at Extinction Rebellion and the Sunrise Movement that brought us the Green New Deal, and the wonderful high school and junior high school students. You know Greta Thunberg, and you should. She's marvelous, but she'd be the first to tell you that the best news is there are 10,000 Greta Thunbergs, and they have 10 million followers. The kids are doing what needs doing, providing the leadership that they need to help us overcome the dead weight of the fossil fuel industry, which has lied about this crisis for 30 years and which continues to frustrate efforts at change at the pace that science demands. So it is a wonderful thing that young people are in the lead here. But it is not okay to assign saving the world to 17-year-olds as if it's some kind of homework problem set. They cannot do it themselves. They need the rest of us backing them up. And in particular, I think, they need those of us in the baby boomer and silent generations, those of us above the age of 60. Why? Well, because we have extraordinary political power. There are 70 million of us, and we vote in huge numbers. And because we have, fairly or not, and I'd say mostly not, an extraordinary share of the economic assets. In the United States, those baby boomers and silent generation have about 70% of the wealth, compared with, say, about 5% for millennials. So, they cannot be expected to do it themselves, and they have every right to call on us, and I think that we will respond. That's why we've started this new organizing effort called Third Act, aimed at people over the age of 60. And not focused only on climate. We're going to talk about the political climate too. In fact, our first two interlocking projects are to go after the banks that are providing the funding for fossil fuel, following the lead of young people who are standing up to Chase and Citi and so on, and to work hard on voting rights, because voter suppression is wrong in and of itself and also a great threat to progress on the things that we need. So let me talk for a minute about why I think that this is not just important, but possible. There is an idea afoot in the world that people become more conservative as they age. And there's a certain amount of evidence to support it, but not overwhelming. And in any event, I do not think it necessarily applies to this particular generation. And that's because we have our own particular and interesting history. People of our age, our first act, we either participated in or bore witness to some of the most remarkable political and cultural transformations in American history. We were around at least to watch the civil rights movement, anti-war movement, the birth of the women's movement, all those crucial things. Maybe the second act of our lives was taken as a whole, a bit more focused on consumerism than citizenship. We could just be honest there. And it's not true of everyone, obviously, including many pioneers who have stayed absolutely true to that legacy all the way. But in any event, we've emerged now into the third act of our lives, with skills, with resources, in many cases with children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren, and hence a real need to try and not become the first generations that left the world a worse place than we found it, which is what we are on course to do. We need to summon all that and make real use of it. Let me tell you a little story. 10 years ago this year, I wrote the letter that asked people to come to Washington, D.C. for the beginning of the civil disobedience against the Keystone Pipeline that turned into the kind of great environmental fight of the era. Now, that's not an easy letter to write in any event, telling people you need them to come get arrested. But one of the things I said in it was, I did not think that young people should have to be the cannon fodder here, because if you're 17, maybe an arrest record's not the best thing for your resume. One of the few unmixed blessings of growing older is, past a certain point, what the hell are they going to do to you? And so it was with pleasure that I saw people who looked with hairlines like mine arriving in D.C. to get arrested in what turned into the biggest civil disobedience action in many years in America, and ultimately successful. The Keystone Pipeline will not be built. We did not ask people as they were getting arrested, how old are you? Because that seemed like it might be a little rude, but we did say, cleverly I think, who was president when you were born? The two biggest cohorts came from the FDR and the Truman administrations. On the last day, there was a man arrested with a sign around his neck that said, World War II vet, handle with care. He was old enough that he had been born in the Warren Harding administration, long enough ago that I'd almost forgotten there was a Warren Harding administration. The point was that young people there got to see their elders acting the way that we need elders acting if we're going to pull through. So that's why we're forming Third Act. Not everybody has to go to jail, but we need people outside their comfort zone because the planet is outside its comfort zone and because our democracy is outside its comfort zone. We are losing the things that we knew, that we were born into. And so it is up to us to make the difference that we can while we can. We have, if you think about it, no time to waste, and many, many formulations of that sentence. And so it's great fun to get to answer the call of the young people who are standing up to the banks, because when they're protesting outside Chase Bank branches, that's really important. Bankers need to know that kids are not having it, what they're doing lending to the fossil fuel industry. But it's a big help also if they see not just 19-year-olds, but 69-year-olds, because they know whose money's in their vaults. It's really great to have people our age standing up and talking about voting rights, because the Voting Rights Act of 1965 may have been the single most important piece of legislation that Congress passed in our lifetime, and how painful is it to see it being eroded? So that's why great friends, from Bernie Sanders to Jane Fonda to Robin Wall Kimmerer to the great Akaya Windwood to Greta Thunberg to Mark Ruffalo, to on and on and on, have joined to help us get this work underway. And we hope that you will join us too, that you'll go to thirdact.org. And if you're not 60 plus, maybe you know someone who is. Maybe you have a parent, a grandparent, a great-grandparent, a friend who is looking for ways to bring their experience to bear. We can't waste anyone, not undocumented citizens. We need to bring them into the full light of day so they can participate. Not people in racial minorities who've been ignored or overlooked too long. Not older people who sometimes get sort of put aside by our culture. It is time for all of us to come together to defend the world that we were born into. People at Bioneers have done an incredible job of this over the years, and I know that they will in the future. We have wins to celebrate, from Keystone to the tens of trillions of dollars that people have divested We're beginning to see real progress, but it must go much faster, and it will go much faster if we push with everything that we have, all of us. Thank you.